Welcome back to another episode of the Positive Persistence Podcast. I am your host, Ian Bowen, and I am super juiced and jacked to have this next guest on the episode of the podcast with us today. It is the one and only Coach Dez Desmond Dunham. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. So Desmond Dunham, otherwise known as Coach Dez, is a nationally acclaimed coach, community leader, teacher, entrepreneur, and author. As a track and field and cross-country coach, he is very accomplished. He's coached over 100 high school All-Americans and won 75 state and conference championships. He was named the 2022 USA Track and Field Coaches Association National Coach of the Year and is currently an Under Armour Coach Ambassador. Coach Dez is the author of a memoir, Running Against the Odds, awesome book, which was an Amazon #1 release in 2022 that chronicles his inspirational journey to making high school sports history. And he recently also conducted a TEDx talk at the Washington International School on the power of youth sports. And if that's not enough, Dez also founded the Kids Elite Sports, which provides summer sports camps and programs that teach kids life lessons through high-quality sports and physical fitness activities. And every summer, just like this one, he's got nearly 1,000 kids in the Washington, D.C. area attending the Kids Elite Sports camps. Whew, that is a mouthful. Holy accolades. Dez, thank you for being with us on the show. So happy that you're here.
Hey, I'm ecstatic to be here. When you sent out the invitation, I couldn't turn it down. This is a busy time for me. However, I had to be here.
Well, we definitely appreciate that. And I can't wait to get into your story and let our listeners and our viewers really know more about Desmond Dunham and how positive persistence has really been a part of your life to get you from where you were to where you are now. And kind of with that segue, let's kind of just jump into how was life for you when you were a little kid. Let's start in the beginning and just start there with your story.
Yeah. It all started, well, I will say that's the whole impetus of the memoir, where I want to give other people permission, others permission to shine, to be bright, to realize their strengths. And so part one of my memoir, Running Against the Odds, it talks a lot about those challenges that I had early on. And, one of those major challenges I had was that I had a speech impediment. And so, I wasn't the cool kid getting pulled out of the class, to do speech therapy. And so there was some teasing, some bullying. So needless to say, I really didn't appreciate a lot of aspects of my elementary school experience. I had some near and dear friends. However, I had those challenges. And then also, I have dyslexia as well. So between the two of those things, it made school pretty challenging for me early on. And as you would say, I had to realize I had other superpowers, and I had some teachers that helped me along the way. And I ended up developing this photographic memory that ended up being, just a major superpower. And so it took me some time to really cultivate that and to know that I really had that. And it wasn't until I got into Howard University where I scored the highest on an organic chemistry test with the I think it was a class population of about 350 students from all walks of life, and I ended up setting that curve. So, but going back to my childhood, I dealt with that. I dealt with the fact that my dad, he fought in the Vietnam War. As a result of that, he had some things that some challenges in life after that. He was pulling wounded warriors and dead warriors off the battlefield, and when he came home, there was no therapy for him, and so he turned to the vice of alcohol. And unfortunately, when he drank, we kind of all suffered for that. And so, not having school as totally a safe haven, not having the home as totally a safe haven, it left a lot of challenges for me. And I'm just thankful that I found my outlet of running cross country. And that's with the book, talks a lot about running against the odds and how running was that one outlet for me that really helped to shape and mold me to develop that positive persistence, that grit, that determination. And so I'm very thankful that I stumbled upon that.
Yeah, and you talk about the challenges that you faced.
Yeah.
For our listeners who don't know, I mean, growing up in the late '70s, early '80s in economically challenged Gary,
Yep.
Indiana,
Yeah.
and now knowing that you had a distant alcoholic father, the
Yeah.
stats, the statistics were really in your favor to one day become a national coach of the year.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm curious, how did once you've gotten through elementary school, and you've now been um, given the label of being dyslexic and having a speech impediment, what was it like for you to have to deal with that day in and day out, and trying to navigate like relationships in school? Um, was bullying a problem? Did you have any issues
Yeah.
with that, or?
Well, the I would say the saving grace was the fact that I also became a pretty decent athlete. So I was given like an athlete's pass. But I will say that I did have those challenges in school. I did have those interactions with some of my peers that weren't too inviting. And I'm just thankful that I had, some teachers that, I remember one teacher that showed me a statistic of the amount of million and billionaires that are dyslexic, and that got me truly excited for me to understand that, hey, this doesn't have to define me. It doesn't have to, put a ceiling in terms of where I can go in the future. And so after I got over the hump, and you kind of feel like you're the only one going through issues and you feel alone. I went through that quite a bit, and I can say that I didn't have the confidence that I should have had, at an earlier age. And that turning point came. Well, let me back up. I was cut from elementary school basketball, and I love sports. I was cut from middle school basketball, and I also got cut from middle school cross country. And if you know anything about sports, I mean, who gets cut from middle school cross country? And so it was, I was really dejected by that. And I was questioning my athletic ability. I thought I was the next Michael Jordan. But the coaches that that I tried out with, they didn't think so. And
Right.
so I ended up stumbling on cross country in high school. And I will say that the what the first of all, it was such a positive outlet. And I think this, all the benefits you get from doing aerobic activity. And so I will say that it really helped me in terms of balancing the stress that I was feeling on a daily basis. And
Mhm.
then two, my high school cross country coach became a father figure to me. And we call him Chief. His name is Roosevelt Pulliam. But I will say that between the sport of cross country and the mentorship and the father figure that I got out of my high school coach, completely changed the trajectory of my life. And I'm so thankful because, I didn't love running, but I did fall in love for what running did for me. And I think we all know that as aerobic athletes that, you get those endorphins and that serotonin and all those happy hormones. And you don't really know what's happening there. But then when you study it, you're like, holy, crap, this is some serious benefits here. And so I became addicted to the running, the challenge, the development of the grit and the determination, and as you would say, that persistence. I wanted to
Mhm.
achieve so many goals against myself, and when you start to do that, then the sky becomes the limit.
You talk about persistence and grit, and you got cut not once, not twice, but 3 times from sports, and you kept coming back. You were
Kept
definitely
coming back.
persistent. What gave you the grit to keep coming back to trying out for
Yeah,
those sports teams?
yeah.
Where did that
One
come
thing,
from?
yeah, I would say, growing up in Gary, either you sink or swim, and I'm very thankful because, as you know this, I mean, we just have a strong family network. My extended family is just phenomenal, and I would also say my neighborhood friends. We were the Sandlot crew where we, you know, got together and we created our own games and our own sports leagues and go, and so on. And so I can say that I am very lucky. I had some internal problems. I had some problems that were close to home, but then I also have to say that I had a village, and I'm super excited about talking about that village and the family reunions and the gatherings, and so those things continue to push me forward, and for me to know that I can't give up, and I got to keep trying, to move forward. And I think the last thing was that my mother, she worked 24 to 28-hour shifts. She did some things to make sure that my sister and I had an opportunity in life, and so I'm super thankful that I had a hardworking mom that she never gave up, and so it kind of was in our DNA that when you start something or if you have interest in something, then you need to go after that goal.
For sure. Absolutely. Now, I remember reading in your book, you were talking about going out for the cross country team. And when you got there for tryouts, you started running and your mind said, I can do this. But your body said,
Oh
nope.
man.
And you
I,
felt like your chest was going
yeah.
to explode. And, talk a little bit about that
Oh,
first day that you tried out for cross country.
yeah. I mean, I can still feel the pain from that tryout. It was 90 something degrees, and I was trying out late. So the coach, there was no, progressive, training regimen for me. It's either you can get in with these guys or you can't. You'll have to wait for the following year. And so I think that was a time where I harnessed all the pain that I had ever been through. And frankly, I was tired of losing. I was tired of shortchanging myself. And so I really feel like I harnessed everything that I went through in school, everything I went through at home, everything I went through with getting cut from sports. And it all just kind of came together where something just clicked in my head to say that, man, I'm not going to give up. They're going to have to carry me away from here before I actually give up. And when you make that commitment to yourself and you have that
Hmm.
ability to bully yourself and to override what the body is feeling, now you're talking about accomplishing some extraordinary things. And if I had to do that run, 10 times, I mean, I probably would have failed the next 9 times, knowing what the end would bring. Um, but that one day was, a special day. And when I crossed that line, I was in so much pain, but the feeling, the satisfaction, I mean, it's one of those sayings, if you're going to be in pain, if you're going to be uncomfortable, get a reward from it. And that day I
Right.
was leaving with that reward of satisfaction of conquering myself. And so after that, that's when I realized, man, this sport is it's different. It's it doesn't feel as fun, but it feels a heck of a lot more rewarding. And that was probably one of the biggest rewards that I had garnered as a child.
would you say it's fair to say that at that point, it sounds like you were like, enough is enough. Like you
Yeah.
said, I've had enough
No,
disappointment. I've got
yes.
enough stuff going on in my life. It's either I make this happen now or I make this happen now. Like there was no
Yeah.
options. Failure was not an
No.
option. Like it was going to happen.
I was going
And
to
I
bullet.
see,
Yep.
I read a quote in your book that says, "Pain is temporary, pride is forever."
Pride
And
is
it
forever.
seems like you were going to battle any type of pain that came your way. It didn't matter how bad it was, you were going to finish and you were going to
Yes.
make the team.
100%. That was a commitment. I didn't know that when I first went out, but as you know, as you putting one foot in front of the other, you start to realize, man, I'm not, I'm going to commit to this cadence. I'm going to commit to this rhythm, and I'm going to keep putting this one. If I would have thought about the 8 miles that I would have had to run, you know, within the first mile, it would have made it, I mean, too daunting of a task, but it
Yeah.
just became, let me put one foot in front of the other and, let's see what the end brings. And so, and that's the way we got to look at a lot of challenges in life where, you can't look at the full staircase. You got one step at a time. And if you make that commitment over, 365 days or whatever amount of days and hours you have, you'll notice you're going to be chipping away towards those goals. And eventually the light will come. It doesn't come when you want it to come, but eventually it does come when you get into that mindset.
Yes, man. So many lessons right there. That's Coach Dez coaching us up right now. That is what I'm talking about. That is the essence of positive persistence.
Okay.
And you also talk about, you want the light, but the light may not come right now. And we are so
Yeah.
conditioned to this the dopamine hit society that we live in, where we want immediate gratification, where that's just how life is, especially if you have a big, hairy, audacious goal that you're going to have to realize is going to be one day at a time, one step at a time, one action at a time. And you start to build those small wins that'll eventually turn into big ones.
100%. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm talking to coaches this upcoming weekend at the Virginia Coaches Association clinic, and one of my focal points is getting these coaches to get their athletes to play chess and not checkers. And like you say, most people now have to get that instant gratification. Well, in chess, it's all about, setting up those moves 10, 15, 20 moves down the line, whatever it is, but just being patient. And so I always challenge my athletes and ask them, are you playing checkers or are you playing chess? Because, this instant gratification is not going to work. The things that you get easily, it doesn't really hold a whole lot of value at the end of the day. And so one thing that I did learn along, my path in life is that the harder I work for something and to achieve something, the more it means to me. And so I'm thankful for all the setbacks, because that just allowed me to have a major comeback in life.
Yes, Les Brown says setbacks are nothing but setups for comebacks.
Yes,
Love
yes,
that.
yes.
I love that. So we talked a little bit about your childhood, elementary, middle school, high school. So you're on the cross country team in high school, and you had some success there, correct?
Yeah. I had some pitfalls and I had some success there.
Tell us a little bit about the successes you had in high school track.
Well, so I will say that I was very fortunate where I ran with one gentleman who was a Foot Locker finalist, and then I ran with another guy who was a sub 4:10 miler. So I was in some really nice company in terms of being in the distance world. And we were actually the first African American team to qualify for the state championships in cross country. So we made cross country sexy in Gary, Indiana, running along the streets. And, during that time, Gary was one of the top 3 cities in terms of homicides. So it
Mhm.
wasn't a popular thing to be running through the streets of Gary, but we were very fortunate where we got the athletes pass, which meant that if you're doing something positive with sports, then you had less distractions and less folks that were trying to pull you down in the wrong direction. And
Right.
so our coach was just phenomenal. He was ahead of his time in terms of training methods and methodologies, and so he's someone that I studied his training methods that has allowed me to take some of those key ingredients as a coach. Um, but there was this one particular time, and this is probably one of my favorite chapters in running against the odds. It's more than a ribbon, and there was this one race where I wanted to be in this top 10. And if you make it into the top 10, you sit in these big lavish chairs and you get these humongous medals in front of thousands of spectators, fans, family members, runners. And I was training about 50, 60 miles a week. And so I was making all practices, even our 2-a-day practices, doing everything, checking all the boxes. And so I finally get into this invitational race, 350 runners. And they eventually shoot the gun, and we're like a big stampede across the field. And I quickly, work my way up to the top 20. And after the first mile, I start to realize I don't feel as good as I thought I would feel. And this is not how I picture things to go. Mile number 2, legs feel like logs. My breathing becomes constricted. I mean, it was all bad from there. And I mean, I struggled, and I end up getting this ribbon, 75th place, that I ended up throwing it in the mud. My coach saw me throw it in the mud, and he was super upset with me because he always talks about sportsmanship and also owning your actions. No one kept me from being where I should have been. And so after we had a long talk, I'm sitting on the bus. I got my hoodie over top of my head, and I tears are streaming down, and I'm really just just dejected and down and out. And so after we had that talk, it just kind of got me thinking that one of my favorite poems is Invictus, and the last stanza says, "I am the master of my fate, I am the captain of my soul." And I'm kind of thinking along those same lines. And so the very next day, sun comes up, and I had to make a decision. I look over at my nightstand at the ribbon. It made me sick. It made me so sick. And I ended up picking the ribbon up, and I took a tack, and I tacked it right next to my light switch. And I said, I'm going to look at that ribbon every single morning when I turn my lights on. And that ribbon became the single most motivation. So I went from 50, 60 miles a week to running 80 to 90 miles a week. And it was the motivation, and it was the trials and tribulations that I was going through. And I realized that if I don't do something to improve, then there's no future with me running that. The sport that I fell in love with, that it's going to come to an end. And so, and a lot of people think just because you actually go to practice, or you go through the motions of doing something, that you're actually getting better. And
Right.
that's not, you got to be intentional about all the little details. And so, long story short, a year later, I'm second place in this competition, and the Lafayette Jeff Invitational. And but the process of that is what taught me so much more than the actual destination. I don't know where my second place medallion is. I can tell you exactly where my 75th place ribbon is. And as we said earlier, if you're going to have some pitfalls, you're going to have some troubling times, get a reward from it. And And I will say that process is what garnered me the scholarship to Howard University. And I'm very thankful for that, that setback in life, because as you would say, it allowed for a major comeback for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to just kind of go back a little bit into your story, what you were telling us, most people who go through the practice, they go through the training, they think they're ready, they get out there to compete, and then they get smacked in the mouth. They have well, maybe this
I
isn't
got two smacks.
right. They think that maybe this isn't for me,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
I did everything that I could. I'm quitting. I'm not going to be good enough for this. So what was it, other than your coach obviously was a huge part of you kind of rebounding back from that, but what was it also inside you that didn't allow you to let self-limiting beliefs start to creep in and start to change your mindset about running?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of mentioned a couple of those things before. One, I'm looking at my mom, who's working, her butt off.
Yeah.
I've been cut several times. So it's just this perfect storm, that I was going through, where I had to think, man, I'm not going to shortchange myself. And what's the difference between these other, successful runners versus me? And I knew I wasn't the most talented, but I always took pride in myself in terms of being the hardest worker. And the question I had to ask myself is, can I work harder? And the answer, painfully, the answer was
It's
yes.
always yes. It's always yes.
And sometimes you got to do a little soul searching, because it's not to, undermine what you have done. But you got to stick to the question, can you do more? And I think that's where a lot of people have a hard time looking in the mirror to, whether it's giving up a little bit of social media, or giving up a lot of, the social distractions. And don't get me wrong, I love to have a good time. I love to party. I love to, spend time. But can I limit some of those things? And so with me during that time, it was hanging out with my buddies. All right. So I can't hang out as much. I got to put a little bit more time. And that there's a fatigue factor that you go through in those initial, first 3 to 6 weeks, where you're getting your body to acclimate to the new stress, the new training. And so it took it was hard for me initially, but I will say that the sacrifices definitely paid off. And you just got to ask yourself that simple question, can you do more? And finding out where are those areas that you can make more sacrifices to get more over here. And, I always say this, if you pay now, you can play later, or you can play now and you'll still pay for it later. And so, and that's based off of the goals that you want to achieve. And so at that point, I just became super driven, because I just got tired of losing. I got tired of just always being the one, the man out, and I wanted more for myself. So it really just invigorated this fire in me, that from that point on, I had a different outlook in life.
I'm reading this quote that I had written down from your book, and it perfectly sums up really what you just said. And it goes, with commitment and dedication, dreams come true for me and for anyone else. Some learners grind at home, others learn it at school. I learned it on the course. Facing my failures and limitations taught me how to rebound and persevere. That's it right there.
That's it.
That is it right there. So you have some success. I mean, you're going from 75th to 2nd. That's amazing. In a year's time. In high school, you mentioned that you got a scholarship, and now you're off to Howard University. track is still a big part of your life. You're on a track team at Howard University. How are
Yeah.
things going for you once you reach there?
Oh, Howard was, I mean, it was a great decision, but it was also this roller coaster because, being from Gary, I can't say that I was fully prepared to be with some of the brightest minds in the world. And so I had to get up to speed quickly. And so I had to make some decisions, who are going to be who's going to be my clan, who's going to be, you know, there's a lot of studies that show, the five people that talk to the most are going to be they're going to influence 70 to
Hmm.
75% of your decisions.
Right.
And so, you have a tendency to learn, I think we kept it in layman's terms where we say birds of a feather flock together.
Right.
And, but, I'm a firm believer in science, and I'm so fascinated with science. And, you know, and one of my, favorite, theories is that, energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It can only be transferred. And so
Yeah.
it is so important that you put yourself around positive people that can, bring you that energy on a daily basis. So I think that I was really successful in finding my village. I joined a fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, and so that was super powerful for me. And I can just say that while I went through certain challenges, at Howard, trying to balance everything and also the academic rigor, that it was tough at times. But I can say that the village, the tribe that I had was amazing. And to this day, I'm still in contact with a lot of my fraternity brothers, a lot of my Howard folks. And there's just like a lot of love. And, through love, you can conquer so many things in life. And I was just immersed in that.
What are some of the main lessons when you look back on, your childhood, your time in college? What were some of the main lessons that you continue to pass on now to your athletes? Because
Yeah.
now you again, national coach of the year, amazing honor. Obviously, you get there by having a ton of success, which means that you also have amazing athletes, but you also know how to coach those athletes to give their very best. So I'm just
Yes.
curious, what are some of the experiences that you use from your past or coaching techniques or tips that you
No.
give to your athletes to get into their head, to be able to tap into their potential
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
they compete?
Yeah, so I think just a few things. One, I try to, shape and mold the perspective of the mindset in life. And so, unfortunately, we have a tendency sometimes to think that the glass is half empty.
Hmm.
And so, one thing I like to do is change your perspective in terms of, okay, we're going to look at that glass as being half full, and getting our young folks to count their blessings and not their problems. And that's Bob Marley, by the way. And count your blessings and not your problems. And
Hmm.
we also live in this world where, I mean, we have this disease of me, and when it should be about we.
Yeah.
And so I always talk to my athletes about the bigger picture in life, and this was also part of what my TEDx talk was about as well. I don't mean to jump ahead, but we want to build better people through sports. And when I get my athletes to adopt that mentality of becoming a better person, being committed, not just being committed for yourself, but being committed for your team, for your school, having pride. Those are the things that transcend into becoming a better community member, becoming a better family member, becoming a more of an impact, change maker in the world. And so I'm getting them to understand that this is not just running, or if it's just any sport, this is a means to becoming a better person that's going to impact the world in so many different facets. And the other thing is, I always try to get my athletes to think about the bigger picture in terms of that there's so much that's happening in the world. And it's so unfortunate. And, prayers to those who are going through, a lot of unfortunate circumstances. But I make it a point to get them to understand that, you didn't decide your parents, you didn't decide your zip code, you didn't decide where you were going to be born and raised. And I get them to understand that a lot of my athletes are very fortunate to be born into their circumstances. And now, we all got issues and we all have things we can, complain about. But I get them to understand that you could have been born, unfortunately into a war. You could have been born, in the Congo. You could have been born, where there's, where you don't have clean water, or, there's $25 a month, jobs available. And so getting them to understand that they are blessed, and that that you don't sacrifice your gifts in life. You don't sacrifice what you put out on a daily basis, and you don't sacrifice what your ability to the power you have to change the world. And through that, our athletes are, stellar athletes, because that becomes the byproduct of the process that they are involved in. Thinking about family, thinking about community, thinking about the bigger picture, and, not whining and complaining about having to come to practice or work hard at practice or to do an extra repetition. I'm trying to equip, young folks for the real world and for life. And the winning is just a byproduct of that.
Byproduct of their hard work.
Yep.
For sure. There's another quote that you put in your book from Martin Luther King: the ultimate measure of a person is not where they stand in times of comfort and convenience, but where they stand in times of challenge and controversy. And, I heard the same sentiment again from Les Brown. He says that controversy introduces a man or woman to themselves. Like, you find out who you really are when you have controversy in your life, or you have this obstacle in your life that you have to overcome. You find out what you're made of. And, your athletes are really lucky to have a coach like you who's able to grow them through the sport of track and cross country. Which,
Thank you.
I guess that's what happened to you as well, correct? I mean, that's you had an amazing coach that helped you grow.
I'm just paying it back. Yep.
That's amazing.
So I'm convinced you actually read the book.
I did read the book. Yes. Cool. And I'm going to tell all of our listeners and viewers to go out and get this book. Okay. Quick segue. Where can I get this, Coach Dez?
You can grab it from Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, Politics and Prose. It's out there. It's doing really well. It's still doing well. So you can grab it from, you can go to my website, CoachDezDunham.com, or you can follow me on Instagram for more information. But, the journey is still going on. And, my wife and I were working on book number 2, and okay. So we could talk about that in the next part 2 podcast.
Right. Next episode. You got it.
Next episode. Yes.
For sure. So I'm curious to know, do you have a personal credo or a personal mission statement? What is it that pulls you up when you feel down? Like, how do you coach yourself to get through some of the hard times?
Yeah, I think one thing I do say to myself, a couple of things. One is, and it's just simple. You don't have to be the best to give your best. And you don't have to feel your best to give your best. So, I kind of say that when I'm grumbling and getting out of bed sometimes and I'm not as motivated, but, it's like, hey, it's just like that tryout. today is a day I just need to put one step in front of the other, and I don't need to look behind me. That's going to cause me to slow down. But let's look forward to the mission, to the goals, and what we need to accomplish for the day. And so, you have some of those days where you just got to take it bit by bit. And then it brings those days where you're running out of bed because you have stuck through those harder days. But yeah, you don't have to be the best to give your best, and you don't have to feel your best to give your best. Your best is what you can bring on any given day. And we have to make sure that we appreciate those blessings of that.
For sure. Wise words from the Coach Desmond Dunham. All right. Des, man, we could go on for hours about your story and your accomplishments and the amazing things that you do and bring to your community and your family. But I want to give you another chance to let our viewers and listeners know where to find out more about you.
Okay. You can find me on Instagram at Coach Dez Dunham. You can find me on Facebook, Desmond Dunham. And you could also look up the book at Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, Politics and Prose. And, it's still getting some wind behind it. So I'm hoping that it pops up in more of the mainstream, as well as some of your, little nooks of bookstores and, across the country.
That is awesome. I can't wait for the next book. Do we have a little teaser on timeline for that bad boy?
We're slow walking this. I mean, we're more than halfway finished. I would give it about this time next year.
Okay.
Yeah. We're kind of slow walking as some other things have come into the fold of things, and we run the summer sports camps for kids and those type of things. So that's about to really take precedent and take over our lives over the next few months. And
sure.
But yeah, so give us about 12 months and we're going to make that happen.
All right. So not only is he an author, not only is he a coach, not only does he run a tremendous sports program, but Coach Dez is also a speaker. So if you are looking for someone to come talk to your school or any other group, make sure you check him out, look him up. And because I've seen you in action, and he does a great job, family. So if you're looking for someone to speak to your people, make sure you check them out. All right, guys, we're going to thank you. We're going to wrap this up. And I want to thank you for joining us on another episode of the Positive Persistence Podcast. If you like what you heard today, please be sure to like and subscribe to the Positive Persistence Podcast. And you can also find more Positive Persistence on my website, ianbowen.net. On the website, you can read my blog that is full of useful information and inspiring stories, but also be sure to check us out on our socials, Positive Persistence. Thank you once again to Coach Dez for joining us today. And thank you to our listeners for joining us for another episode of the Positive Persistence Podcast. I'm your host, Ian Bowen, reminding you to stay positive, stay persistent, and remember, mindset is everything. We'll see you next time.